Morning all. I had an instructive game last Thursday. We were playing Hendon 2, Muswell Hill, Chaska. We were playing, sorry, not Hendon 2, the mighty Hendon 1. They've got two teams in the Middlesex League. I was playing on board 3. Now, their team was very, very strong. Mesarus on board 1, who's ECF 247. He's been about 25-50 on FIDE. Lauren DeCosta and I am on board 2, who's 229 ECF. And I was playing John Richardson on board 3, 209 ECF. And actually he's been over 200 since ages, since before the year 2000. Very, very strong player. I remember actually losing to him in an IM Norm all-play all in where I tried for an IM Norm many, many years back. And he was very, very strong back then. I wasn't really looking forward to this game when I saw that their team turned up. Okay, but let's see what happened. D4 from John, and I played the King's Indian defence. C4, G6, and he played a very early G3 here, not developing any knights. Accelerated fianchetto. Bishop G7, Bishop G2, D6, Knight C3. And I thought, well, I realised that actually the King's Indian fianchetto line is not one I've been scoring very well in serious chess. For example, the London Classic, the last time I played in the London Classic, not last year, the year before, I think I suffered about 2 or 3 defeats just in the fianchetto King's Indian defence. So it's actually an area I think I need to study with books and videos where possible. But I observed that Knight BD7 is a useful move in this system rather than the usual Knight C6. So okay, I played Knight BD7, Knight F3, both sides castled. Now I played E5, and he played E4, and now I had some memory of a John Nunn game against Korchnoi, where John Nunn had played. I remember him saying that he had taken on D4, but later it wasn't quite in this position. He had played C6 and A5, or rather, sorry, he had played A5 without C6, allowing a Knight B5, and that was given as kind of a mistake because White just plays Knight B5 here in that sort of position. If we have a look at this, and it's difficult to ever dislodge this knight. So this is why I was tempted to play C6 here, just from a historical kind of lesson actually given by John Nunn and the King's Indian. But really, I think one should have one's thinking cap on, and in particular, okay, you might have had some lesson in the past. But if there's like forcing moves in your particular position, because your memory might not be perfect for the exact position that was being talked about, if there's forcing moves which seem useful, then I think that might take priority. Because here I played, to try and avoid this Knight B5 idea, I played C6. And clearly there's a classic problem with the D6 pawn. But then I thought about, historical books like Zurich, Bronstein's Zurich Tournament, where he talked about the early King's Indian games, and D6, is it an exploitable weakness or not? Well, here, White has got this kind of Maroczy bind on D5, and D6 is a bit of a lemon. I think, actually, you could consider D6 even worse potentially than the D6 and a modern Benoni, and that's really saying something, that even a Son of Sorrow type opening, modern Benoni, I think D6 is actually stronger than here. This D6 is really prone to actually immediate attack. So I'm not really sure. It has been played before though, C6 in this position, just not that many times. C6 is like 58 times, or so 72, but the main move apparently is Rook E8, 2054. Akopian, Gelfand all played Rook E8 before, and it's a very nice Rook E8 game I found, just to quickly just show you. So this is a game of Gelfand playing black, where he doesn't play the A5. It doesn't matter about a knight coming to B5 either. Here he plays for A6 and B5 anyway, stopping that B5 square. He's got play on the king side here. And just to flick through this Gelfand game, you see that black generated good play against a very strong opponent, Hulak. This was in Amsterdam 1989, and it was featured in Chess Base magazine. So it's quite an instructive King's in defence game played by Boris, where he got that bishop outside the pawn chain. It's just flicking through this just to show you that black got a good game, and so yeah, there are definitely some model games in the King's Indian fianchetto line to check out. Okay, but anyway, in my game I played c6, and I think this is really okay. This is a bit dodgy, really. It's not such an often played move, and the direct bishop f4 was played, which is actually quite rare as well. White is not usually playing bishop f4 here. The usual move is h3 67 games, b3 11. Bishop f4 is only played like once, but it seems direct and forcing. But instead of the knight going to c5, well, I thought go to e5, attack the pawn. So far so good. b3, now knight h5, and the bishop goes back, and actually there's a forcing move here available which I didn't spot during the game, because this looks a little bit you know, provocative, the bishop going back here. I know you see that in a lot of lines of King's Indian. There's actually a forcing move here, queen f6, which the engine likes. It's actually threatening knight takes c4, and it's interesting to consider this move. For example, if it forces well, if bishop e3, then there's knight g4, and if knight de2, then bishop g4, and we could get something like this, which I'm not sure that black's any worse if we get an exchange of light square bishops like this. This is an interesting position. So this is an interesting idea, queen f6. It looks quite an interesting move to play in this position, queen f6. But I played bishop g4, and this is just setting white up beautifully, unfortunately. I don't know, because actually my rooks have real connection issues with this bishop on the board. Where is this bishop going after f3? If it goes back to c8, then the rooks get disconnected again. If it goes to d7, then d6 is a problem with a frontal attack. So already there's issues. After bishop d7, there's also an issue of f4. It's only the knight's got g4 and the frontal attack. So there's at least two issues now. Well, three: the disconnected rooks, d6, and this knight with f4. So my opponent goes for all of these issues with bishop e3. I play a6. Now g4 is played, kicking this knight. Now h3, as though f4 is a threat, winning this knight. And it's actually now reached disastrous proportions nearly. I'm having to disconnect my rooks, because where can the knight go? It's actually, I would say, at move 16, I actually have a lost position, which is ideal for this brief commentary format, because the game doesn't last too many moves from here. So I put the bishop back on c8, disconnecting the rooks, and he just can build now on d6. I don't know what I can do about d6. It's completely wrong, basically, all starting from c6. If I was going to play the system, I missed an opportunity to exploit a slight issue with bishop c1, and now I'm just really on the back foot with the classic d6. This is definitely an exploitable weakness. There's no kind of cultural illusions about this d6 pawn from Zurich, whatever, from Bronstein's book on the King's Indian, on the annotated games, on the early King's Indian. This is definitely an exploitable weakness in this position. I play rook e8, rook ad1, and there's nothing I can do about d6. It's abysmal, but he's just going to retreat the knight anywhere and attack d6, preferably here, to keep this protected. So queen c7, the knight goes back, and the other problem is, if I try and protect it, well, just f4. If I play bishop f8, that looks terrible as well in this position, because of bishop g5. For example, bishop f8, bishop g5. What am I doing here? It starts to look abysmal. So I thought, well, I'll try and get some active counterplay with a pawn sack. So I play b5. He does take that. I want to keep the queens on because that looks totally disastrous to take and then take on c4, because he's got f4, and this whole diagonal is also a problem. So if we look at this, taking f4 looks a total disaster. I'm going to lose c6, then e5, and he crashes through. This bishop's huge on the diagonal, so I try and keep the queens on. Queen a5, and now the crushing move. Can you guess? A forcing move. If I give you 10 seconds, starting from now. Okay, b4. My queen is now trapped. Believe it or not, it's protecting by the queen here. If queen a3, for example, bishop c1, I'm actually forced to resign. I was gutted, and this is on the same day that I've just done this video on the same day earlier before going into this club match about how to treat winning and losing. Well, it was definitely a painful lesson. I tried to turn the pain into lesson. I tried to think about this game and what went wrong. Clearly, that my understanding of the fianchetto line needs a lot more stem games, concrete stem games, and more calculation and more exploration of dynamic opportunities and dynamic stem games. It was a total disaster in King's Engine. This is my worst King's Engine game of this year, and maybe even of the whole of last year as well. It's my briefest. Anyway, the plus side of that, it's a brief commentary, ideal for the brief commentary series, so I thought I'd share it with you, this King's Engine disaster. He is a very strong FM, I think, with iron norms. He's been over 200 for many years, but I did play disastrously. But it's interesting, the technical opportunity that his particular bishop f4, that actually knight e5 on engine view and knight h5 is not so bad here, if followed up by the interesting queen f6. This could pose white some issues because of the immediate threat of knight c4, so that's interesting to consider anyway. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.